Welcome to the Speak by Design podcast, where we study personal style, message structure, and message strategy so you can become a consistently compelling force. Let's dig in. Let's talk about stories. Now, the reason stories are important to speakers is that stories prove and move. They prove your expertise. They prove you as an authority figure. They prove the process on something. So they're a credentializing tool for you. But then the second thing is they move the audience to think differently or do something differently. That's the power of a story. And data doesn't do that alone. Data baked into a story will, but data without the story is not as motivational. I'm going to talk today about the 5 important stories every leader should have in their back pocket. Now, why do you need these in your back pocket? Because you'll use them over and over again, and you don't want them to look scripted. They need to come across really natural and come out at the right time. What is the right time? When they are reinforcing your business point. So a powerful story for business is one that reinforces the business point. It's not a story that's just fun and used to be a fun fact about you. Go ahead and do that in your casual conversations when you do not care to prove and move people. But when you need to prove and move someone toward a new action or a new way of thinking, the stories are very helpful. And if they're carefully crafted, they are incredibly powerful. Why are they powerful? Because they're memorable. Why does that matter to us? Because then they'll be repeated. Not only are they memorable, they're remarkable, meaning that people will talk about them again. And now you have people spreading your stories for you. Think of the stories that you know in business. Like one of my favorite stories that I use, which is a non-personal story, is a parable called, it's not really a parable though, it's a true story called Acres of Diamonds. Google it and you can see it'll produce the actual true story of how the largest diamond mine was found in Africa. And it's a story of a farmer who couldn't grow crops on the land and then started to dig underneath the surface and found acres of diamonds. And the reason that's a good business point is it's usually used as an analogy to say, just like that farmer thought all was lost and that he had bad land, the truth was he had the greatest land and it was right under the surface. And often we don't notice the great opportunities that are right there under the surface, easy for us to take advantage of. And how can we, as a company, take advantage of the opportunities we already have within our company? See, it's a great analogy. But whatever story you're telling about your past success or about something that's going on in another tangential industry or another business unit or functional area that had some success, that you're now drawing a comparison to your work and the idea that you have, that can convince people and give them a reason to believe that this new thing will happen. So this is why stories are so helpful to us as speakers, but we can make a lot of mistakes with stories. So a story is not useful when you're very short on time and your audience is not going to be patient enough to listen to a 3-minute story. Very few audiences can even go longer than 90 seconds listening to a story, unless that story is jam-packed with excitement and maybe some visual effects and multiple voices and music and put to video. So we have to be very careful in how long these stories are. What's the shortest a story could be? 30 seconds. Here's an example of that, a 30-second story. All right, our audit function discovered a significant weakness in one of our processes. The process was very manual and it was prone to errors. We went to the process owner, Mary Smith, and Mary agreed that this could be improved. Audit guided her to make a few changes. She implemented them very quickly within a week or two. And because of that, we now wanted Mary to teach her improvements to the rest of the organization. And Mary ended up getting a promotion from that audit, as well as it saved the company a lot of time and money because we were doing the process so inefficiently. There's an example that it doesn't need to be long at all. That was actually less than 30 seconds, but that is a story right there because it has characters. So here's the other thing to ask yourself when you're putting together an example or a story, that example has characters. We need a hero. Mary was the hero. We need a guide. Audit function was the guide, and we need a villain. And the villain doesn't need to be a person or a group. It's very often that you want your villain to actually be an inanimate object, a force of pressure. And that could be the manual process in this example and the errors that were coming up, even the declaration of it being a significant weakness in that control or in that process was a villain. All right, so because we have characters, that is more intriguing to the listener. Now ask yourself, where and when do you need these? You need these stories when you are sharing an example that is a proof of the process or the approach that you're recommending. So having these ready to go is helpful, but most people don't have them in their head easily accessible. But you do have so many stories. Every one of us has gone through so many experiences, but we haven't logged those stories. So, step one in working on your stories is starting to journal about all of the aha moments, all of the breakthroughs and epiphanies and successes and even failures of the past that have helped educate you and have influenced your new approach to problem solving or your new deeper expertise that you have. And that is something that is helpful if you are brainstorming regularly, journaling, or capturing these stories in a document somewhere. In our coaching programs, this is step one. We like to work on developing these 5 stories, perfectly crafting them, knowing that you will start to, these stories will evolve, they will change over time, and that's correct. You are always able to embellish and shrink certain portions and amplify other portions as you practice delivering them and getting feedback. And depending upon the audience, you will shift pieces of that story, certainly. All right, so what are the 5 stories to begin with? Well, the first one is your story. This is your origin story. What happened in your background that has helped shape you into the leader and professional you are today, that has shaped your values and your purpose? So I'm the product of 2 attorneys. Both of my parents, they met at law school at the University of Texas. My father ended up, after law school, becoming an actuary, and he took a CEO path in the life insurance industry. My mother was a litigator. And from both of them, I learned the power of 2 things. My father was a great example of the power of a sound logical argument, where my mother was a great example of using passion and emotion to convince people. So I had 2 really good examples helping me as I developed my communication style and the way I structure ideas. So look at your background. What did your parents do and role model? Or what did you learn from your siblings or a grandparent or a great teacher you had and mentor? Those are wonderful pieces to put into an origin story. But remember, this origin story of yours, what do you want to have come out? Usually something about your values, but also about your expertise. So if you have been a part of acquisitions or turnaround stories or massive margin improvement, those are business results that people always take notice of. Let's suppose you are interviewing. By sharing your experience in growth, in saving cost, in turning around failing functions in an organization, that's going to convince them that you could do the same if they hired you for their company. Let's suppose you're selling a product and you say something about what you have done in the past with that product you personally have seen be effective. Maybe you used to be a buyer of this product before turning into a seller of this product. That's very convincing to people, and that's part of your personal journey. Or maybe you're talking about why you chose to leave a competitor to come to this company because their service is better. Put that into your origin story, and that can help convince your audience that they should buy from you. Let's suppose you're raising money. You're trying to earn your fundraising on some level for a nonprofit or maybe for a financial fund you're opening. Your personal story there doesn't need to be about your parents per se, but maybe you have fundraised before and what were the successes and the outcomes of what you did in the past. But that's your personal experience as part of your background story. That's story number one. Now, story number two is take a look at your current company and can you tell the company story? I am amazed at how many people cannot tell the company story. And you might be even asking yourself, oh, I don't need to know the company story. I'm in IT, I'm in compliance, I'm in procurement. I don't need to know the legacy of my organization. That's something the CEO does. Well, for sure, that is something the CEO does. And those of you in the C suite, doesn't matter what title you have, if you're an officer in your organization, you must be able to tell the company history. But I encourage every leader, emerging leader, high potential as well, if you are going to fast track your career, learn how to tell the history of your company. One of the best books I ever read, which was encouraged by my father, was Walter P. Chrysler's story of how he started Chrysler. And it's his own autobiography. You can still find it on Amazon. I make nothing from endorsing this, but the story is so good. And it's about his love of the locomotive and how that led him to be so fascinated by the engine of a car and that race to mass produce cars. And he talks a lot about the competitors. It's highly entertaining, and especially when it's coming just from him. He speaks about his relationship with his wife and his children and how driven he was. It makes you motivated and you feel a surge of ambition just by reading it. Now, imagine you're speaking to someone who works at the company Stellantis, which used to be Chrysler, and you ask somebody there about Chrysler's legacy and what they know about how the company started, and they can't answer that. When that's the case coming from a leader, you already have a lesser opinion of that leader because they don't have any connection to the origins of the company. Learn your company's story. I guarantee it's somewhere around available to you to research online or within the organization. Often in the onboarding cycles, they put together a video about how the company was founded, what values and principles are important to the company, and you want to be able to tell that story too. And that is usually a story that has lots of evolution cycles. Maybe the company used to be in like Whirlpool, used to be in washers and dryers only, but then they started expanding into the garage, into the kitchen, into all the different parts of the first floor and accessories and how they have improved their manufacturing and their supply chain over time as well. Those are the different evolution cycles in a business that are interesting to a listener. Now, the third story is an industry story. And for the industry story, choose a story that resonates with your industry. So it could be from a different industry like Ray Kroc at McDonald's or Sarah Blakely at Spanx or Elon Musk at Tesla and SpaceX, Jeff Bezos and Amazon. You can pull a success story like that and then draw parallels to your own industry. or you can show a very unique view of what you see happening in the world as it relates to your industry. So there's a company we help that does logistics, and they are all about shipping, helping shipping be successful for their big business customers and clients. So for them, they're looking at everything. They're looking at the geopolitical landscape, they're looking at inflation and interest rates. They're also interested in what are the different labor rules, whether you're in France or Germany or in Canada, and being interested in the global perspective on what things are going to affect their customers and clients. All right, so this is the industry story is your way of proving that you have a bigger, more expansive viewpoint on how things are going to help your different stakeholders, your partners, your customers, your clients, and how that's going to affect your business going forward. And there's usually some bad news in that and some very good news in that. The industry story, make sure it has bad news and good news, and it shows off how well you understand the global perspective on your business, or the just the massive broader outlook you have on how this is going to affect your competitors and your customers. The fourth story is the success story. And this is usually where we spend the most time in coaching, because your success stories, you don't need just one, you need many, because you look at all the things you need to prove. Let's say you had already introduced yourself as being somebody who's well versed in mergers and acquisitions, in integrating cultures, integrating systems, in increasing margin, keeping it sustainable, and expanding over time. You're going to want a story that encompasses all of those features. Well, likely it's not going to be one story. It might be two, it might be four stories. You want to have those all documented. So, success stories, we start by working with one, but then we want to make sure that people are always building to their list of success stories. In IT, so in information systems work, in that department, I find that success stories are the most needed because people don't see the successes. They see the failures more easily when there's an outage or a breach, but they don't see that every day we're having successes and wins in protecting the company's infrastructure and keeping everything moving the way it should. So in IT functions, it's very important to be grabbing those success stories, looking for them all the time. And sometimes they are hidden in a failure. So even though we're calling them success stories, a war story ends up becoming a success story. You just have to lengthen the period of time. So maybe you begin your success story with, you all might recall, we had a breach a year ago. Because of that breach, we discovered some vulnerabilities, we made these changes, and now we are safe and protected to a much higher level where our competition is not. You might have seen the headlines where our competitor unfortunately did not make the changes we did. There's a success story right there. The last story is the picture of the future story. And you might say, oh, that's for leaders only. No, the picture of the future story is for anyone who is looking to signal that they're ready for a more expanded role. So even if you are preparing to ask for a promotion or earn that promotion, of course, you want to be able to show that you can articulate vision and strategy. And this is the picture of the future story. This is you being able to say, we will be a blank $1 billion company. We will be the top provider of X. It's you putting out a big, futuristic, bold headline and then sharing a story, a fictitious story of how you will get there. Now, some of you aren't comfortable with fiction. You say, well, I don't want to make a prediction that I'm then held to, or I can't see the future. But if you can't see the future, you cannot be a successful leader. You have to be able to take a shot at guessing at the future. And this story is usually the one that people struggle with the most because they don't spend as much time thinking about the future as they do thinking about the past. If you already know this is a weak spot, journal about this as well. What really is possible for your company? Maybe you need to sit down with a blank sheet of paper and come up with 20 obnoxious, impossible, over the top, audacious goals for your company, for your functional area, thinking about what you wish and dream could happen if you didn't care what anybody else thought, if you weren't trying to bake it into somebody else's set of beliefs and preferred approach. What could be possible for this organization? Allow yourself to dream. This is when you find your most creative ideas and you end up bringing the very best of you to the organization. So, first think about it, and then your goal is to put that into a fictitious story about the future, all anchored to a belief you have around how big the company is going to be, how strong they're going to be, how successful or correct or appropriate they're going to be, how high principled they're going to be. And put that big, bold statement out front and then tell the imaginary story about that future state. All right, so those are the 5 most important stories. Let me summarize them again. And start journaling and working on them as soon as you can, because the more you start practicing them with purpose, the better they get. They are number 1, your story. Number 2, the company story. Number 3, the industry story. Number 4, the success story, which could be a war story, framed with great learning at the end. And then the 5th one is the picture of the future story. Let me leave you with one aspiration around these stories. You want to push yourself to make these stories very memorable to people. Maybe that means you need to include one piece of data, or you need to repeat the sentence of impact twice. Your delivery in these stories matters. We have a lot on this topic of storytelling, and if this is of interest to you, reach out to us. We'd be happy to provide a group training on it or private coaching, helping you perfect these 5 stories. All right, have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone. If you are enjoying all of these lessons, but now you're hungering to turn all of this into skills and habits that make this work intuitive and natural so that you don't have to think about it, then you want to join Speak by Design University. That's our coaching program that gives you private coaching, group coaching with me, group training, self-paced learning, as well as exceptional networking with other people like you. This program is for managers and above, people whose careers are on fire and they're looking to hit their next level, and they want to do that sooner rather than later. Check it out at speakbydesign.com/join. That's speakbydesign.com/join, and you can start with us at the 1st of next month. We hope to see you there.